The Ravens defense and Lamar Jackson are going to have to put together another impressive performance. Jackson is 1-3 against the Chiefs. And those meetings in the regular season, Jackson has 7 total touchdowns to Mahomes's 13.
All right. Thank you very much. You can show off your Ravens pride by getting your car stenciled. Some people are doing that already, in fact. The team is offering free car stenciling outside the stadium. It's happening between 4 and 8 o'clock in Stadium Lot N. Now, whether you're heading down to the stadium or you're going to go to a watch party or just stay at home and watch the game, we'd like to see how you are cheering on the Ravens. Scan that QR code on your screen. That will take you to foxbaltimore.com, where you can upload pictures and videos powered by Stackler.
Let's get a final check of that forecast, and the numbers are going to be running milder by the day here, at least for the next several days, as we go from the upper 40s to the mid 50s to the mid 60s around here. They will come with additional rain, though, Thursday and Friday. Right now, scattered showers expected both Saturday and Sunday. We'll be able to refine that Ravens forecast as we get a little closer to game day in terms of the timing of those showers, and then kind of just staying damp into the day on Monday. Back to you.
Wyatt, thank you. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 6, city police seize illegal guns off the street. Why concerns are growing that they could be connected to drug trafficking. And a new state audit takes aim at the city police department's alleged overtime malpractice, how that could indicate oversight issues within the department.
BPD seizes hundreds of guns and ghost guns off city streets. Why investigators say it could be connected to a larger drug trafficking operation. BPD coming under fire after a new report claims the department isn't policing overtime wages, what it could cost you, the taxpayer. A growing number of residents say they don't feel safe in their communities, why lawmakers are struggling to tackle juvenile crime throughout the state.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 6.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Mary Bubala. Baltimore police say more than 100 firearms have been taken off city streets so far this year. Within just 20 days, Baltimore police say officers have taken 97 guns and 17 ghost guns off city streets. That's 114 firearms total, or about 5 weapons per day. A number of these seizures were also linked to drugs or drug trafficking operations, including additional seizures of fentanyl and crack cocaine. BPD says 3 people were taken into custody as part of an ongoing drug trafficking operation investigation.
If you could eliminate one thing, if you want to reduce crime in Baltimore and you could control one factor, it would be controlling the illegal drug trade. I think would have a very strongly positive correlation with violence reduction.
Baltimore police have not yet identified the 3 people taken into custody with a seizure, saying the investigation into the drug trafficking operation still ongoing. Just days into the new year, U.S. Attorney for Maryland Eric Barron, alongside other federal and state and local partners, announced plans to ramp up the focus on guns and repeat violent offenders. Well, a scathing state audit is taking aim at alleged overtime malpractices within the Baltimore Police Department. The Office of Legislative Services finding in just a year and a half, the department racked up more than $66 million worth of overtime wages. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor reports.
Virtually no monitoring. That's how this massive audit is describing BPD's tracking of overtime spending, allegedly allowing for at least 7 police officers to collect more than $100,000 worth of overtime in 1 year alone. A newly released 56-page audit finding BPD leadership not properly policing overtime wages within the department. The report claiming between January 2021 to June 2022, BPD's overtime wages costing the city more than $66 million. Auditors concluding a lack of oversight and disciplinary action is what's leading to excessive overtime being paid to certain officers.
$66 million is a lot of taxpayer money that's being paid out, and taxpayers and all citizens of Baltimore aren't ensured that this money is going for the purposes it's supposed to, protecting them.
In 2022 alone, the auditors finding 100 officers recording more than 1,000 hours of overtime, of which the department's top 10 earners all doubling their base salaries with overtime. Auditors claiming these individuals routinely violated key overtime requirements.
They're wasting police resources and they're wasting taxpayer dollars.
Other findings of the audit, BPD did not require reviews to ensure that officers did not work more than 32 hours of voluntary overtime per week, a policy BPD allegedly broke at least 693 times in 2022. Long shifts, former Deputy Commissioner Jason Johnson says, could cost more than taxpayers.
The officers working many hours in a day, several days in a row, and really not getting enough sleep for a job where you're expected to make life and death decisions at any time. So it certainly from a health and safety and wellness standpoint is not good.
In response, the department blaming staffing shortages and arguing it's still struggling to implement a new payroll system, which rolled out in December of 2020. Moving forward, BPD vowing to improve training for payroll compliance, conduct regular internal audits of overtime activity, and improve distribution of overtime in compliance with BPD policy. Johnson among those applauding the changes, but also questioning why weren't they implemented sooner.
It is a difficult and complicated problem. We all should acknowledge that. And also at the same time, we can acknowledge that it's probably something that should be solved by now.
This is also the state's last scheduled audit of BPD's overtime spending. As the city takes control of the department, the state is requesting that these audits continue. Today, I reached out to Mayor Scott's office asking if he agrees. As the News Time tonight, though, have not heard back. In Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Monzi and the Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs will be audited this year. During a hearing at City Hall today, the council approved a request from the Inspector General to replace planned audits for the city's Law and Planning Department with audits for other agencies. The Monzi audit will look into how the Safe Streets program spends money and how those spending decisions are made. The Inspector General saying it should be a top priority.
The amount of money that goes through, especially ARPA, is what, 650 some million. So in Safe Streets has received a lot of money too. So I truly appreciate the priority of realizing that, you know, we got to follow the money.
At the hearing today, city leaders also approved audits for the police department's towing practices, city health department grants, and a number of other city agencies. The exact timeline for the Monzi audit is still unclear. As violent crime continues, critics are raising questions about Democrats' plan to tackle the rise in juvenile crime. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost has more on what lawmakers are saying about these trends.
Some of the statistics are sobering. The number of violent crimes in Maryland going unsolved continues to increase, and how to fix this problem is a question that lawmakers are grappling with and struggling to find a solution.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone.
On tap for the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee.
Trend lines, vice headlines.
A look at crime trends in Maryland. The nonpartisan nonprofit Council of State Governments Justice Center clearly outlining the declining number of violent crimes getting solved.
And all violent crimes in Maryland are more likely to go unsolved today than a decade ago.
Maryland seeing a 35% increase in homicides since 2012. The state has the third highest violent crime rate in the region, behind Washington, D.C. and New York City.
There's a place where there's an opportunity to think about increasing accountability and also responding more effectively to the people who commit violent crime.
Lawmakers facing the reality communities simply don't feel safe. To improve, the group says there needs to be certainty of consequences for criminals.
Clearly, there's no certainty when 2/3 of homicides aren't solved and 70% of rapes aren't solved and 75% of robberies aren't solved. There is no certainty. People are committing crimes and literally getting away with murder.
If we really want to get serious about deterring future violence, solving violent crime is really going to be a big piece of that equation, and making sure that folks are held accountable.
Some lawmakers, like Senator William Folden from Frederick County, say there simply aren't enough officers to handle the volume of crime.
So we're seeing some increases in violent crime, and we're seeing a dramatic drop-off in the number of police officers who are available to be that resource to investigate these violent crimes, and we're seeing unsolved rates at ridiculously high numbers, and that's just not fair to the community, it's not fair to law enforcement, and it's certainly not fair to the victims.
The data shows people don't feel safe, and we question the leader of the Senate about how to change that.
Do you think that there's room in this session for the legislature to tackle some of the needs for solving some of these violent crimes to help increase community sense of safety, especially in Baltimore?
At the end of the day, you get convictions by having a real investigation in which there is physical evidence and eyewitness testimony. And it is very difficult for prosecutors to bring forward a case and get a conviction if there is not both physical evidence and testimony.
Senate President Bill Ferguson says if people don't trust the justice system, they are less likely to come forward and work with the process. But without cooperation, cases often go unsolved.
You can't ask law enforcement to produce magic.
More law enforcement isn't a guarantee for more cases to get closed, rather a focused approach from police, according to the Justice Center. But improving police relationships with the community will be key, and how to make that a reality remains unclear. Right now, the data shows Maryland continues to struggle with closing violent crime cases, leading to more Marylanders feeling unsafe in their own community.
Tackling the crime trends includes dealing with juvenile crime. Senate President Bill Ferguson says that a high-level agreement has been made in terms of juvenile crime remediation and diversion. He tells us that there could be some concrete plans unveiled sometime next week. In Annapolis, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
And Mackenzie will be in Annapolis following every step of this year's legislative session over the next 3 months. You can watch all of her coverage on air and online at foxbaltimore.com.
We have breaking news tonight out of the Middle East. The United States carried out airstrikes in Iraq today, targeting Iranian-backed military bases in that country. U.S. Central Command says those strikes came in response to attacks by Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah. Now, the airstrikes targeted Hezbollah headquarters, storage, and also training locations. Days ago, 4 U.S. soldiers were hurt in a ballistic missile attack on an airbase in Iraq. Now, they have since returned to duty. Earlier this month, the United States carried out similar airstrikes in the country, targeting a member of an Iranian-backed operating group in Iraq.
The U.S. and U.K. carrying out more airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. I'm Atra al-Nashar with their next move to try and stop attacks in the Red Sea.
And a pretty mild day across central Maryland. Temperatures reaching into the mid, even upper 40s, and the warm-up just beginning. We'll talk about how mild it gets and when the rain arrives into Maryland. That's coming up.
Two Navy SEALs, one from Maryland, have lost their lives in the line of duty. 37-year-old Navy Special Warfare Operation First Class Christopher Chambers and 27-year-old Navy Special Warfare Operator Second Class Nathan Ingram. The SEALs disappeared January 11th while attempting to board a ship to search for weapons bound for Houthi rebels in Yemen. One Navy SEAL fell into the water due to 8-foot-high swells. The second disappeared after diving in to help him. Chambers is from Maryland. He enlisted in 2012. On Twitter, Governor Moore called the death heartbreaking and asked that Marylanders keep both soldiers in their thoughts and prayers. Well, then tonight, the White House confirms serious discussions are underway for a potential temporary ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostages. Sinclair national correspondent Atra El-Nashar joins us live from Capitol Hill with the very latest on this development. Good evening, Atra.
Hey, good evening, Mary. You know, this news is certainly what families of hostages have been wanting to hear, but nothing is final. And these talks could be complicated by deadly confrontations both in Gaza and Yemen that are stoking fears of a bigger conflict. In the middle of the night in Yemen Monday, American and British forces struck 8 Houthi locations. According to the Pentagon, targets included the Iran-backed terrorist group's underground storage and missile and air surveillance capabilities.
These strikes were precise, proportionate, and intended to further disrupt and degrade the capabilities the Houthis have been using to threaten global trade and the lives of innocent mariners.
The Pentagon says the goal is to de-escalate tensions and restore stability in the Red Sea, where Houthis have been attacking commercial ships in response to Israel's offensive in Gaza. There's no sign yet of any de-escalation. A top Houthi leader posting on X, "Our people do not know how to surrender, and they are fighting to prevent the annihilation and siege of the people of Gaza, and the Americans are fighting and bombing the people of Yemen to protect the terrorist criminal, the Israeli enemy." Last week, President Biden said this.
Are the airstrikes in Yemen working? Well, when you say working, are they stopping the Houthis? No. Are they going to continue? Yes.
UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says the strikes have been effective and they won't hesitate to act again, including steps to cut off the Houthis' funding.
We are working closely with the United States on this and plan to announce new sanction measures in the coming days.
Now, none of this is easing fears about a broader war breaking out in the Middle East. And when asked if confrontations with Houthis will continue until Israel's offensive in Gaza is over, the Pentagon said today that the U.S. will continue operations with international partners in the Red Sea, including additional strikes if necessary. But Mary, the Pentagon said the U.S. does not want to have to go beyond that.
And do we know any more about the talks for the hostage release, which is part of all of this?
A bit. Keep in mind, since the early days of the conflict, Qatar has been an intermediary for Hamas and Israel. And this morning, a spokesperson for the Qatari Foreign Ministry said that they are receiving constant replies from both sides, but that recent statements from Israeli officials about not believing in a two-state solution are making for a harder mediation process. Back to you.
Atra El-Nashar reporting live for us from D.C. tonight. Thank you. Well, the world remains 90 seconds away from global catastrophe. That is according to the experts behind the Doomsday Clock. They announced today there are no changes to the metaphorical countdown. The minute hand has been moved forward and backward 25 times since it was created in the 1940s. It warns the public about the issues we must address to survive. This year's report highlights the risk of nuclear escalation, climate change, and the dangers of AI.
All right, on the weather front, we continue to look at a pretty clear, quiet scenario here across Maryland and the mid-Atlantic states. Now, further north, some snow showers tonight, including for those voters in the big primary up in New Hampshire. But back across the south, it's all about the rain, and this is the weather that's headed in our direction. So we're actually going to be shifting to a much more spring-like pattern here over the next several days. Beautiful shot of the Inner Harbor tonight, 38 degrees right now at BWI. That temperature will continue to drop slightly tonight. We'll probably get down close to the freezing mark. May see a few patches of refreezing, but not the widespread refreeze we had early this morning at sunrise as temperatures were down to 20s. Tonight will not be as frigid. The numbers are going to slowly fall from the upper 30s down eventually to the lower 30s. And then as we go into the early part of the day tomorrow, temperatures will start to push back up pretty quickly into those 40s. So it's a milder trend setting up. It's going to continue in the next several days. Rain chances also going up by the day, at least through Friday. And then this weekend, hopefully a break in the action, so to speak, some partial clearing at least. We do see that the clouds increase through most of the day today. The chilliest air is now bottled up to our north. We got an edge or a taste of that milder air just southwest of us. That's going to increase over the next few days. And also the rain chances increasing over the next few days. First in of several waves of low pressure getting ready to track north and northeast as we go into the day tomorrow. You can see it kind of misses Maryland to the north and west. Pittsburgh up into Chicago and Detroit will get soaked. But as we go into really Thursday, or even like say to late tomorrow night into early Thursday, that's where scattered showers become an issue for Maryland itself. And certainly that snow and all the salt out there begin to kind of wash off as we get several rounds of showers in here. And then Friday, another round of rain getting set up as we go into the last day of the work week there. So yeah, a wet scenario, but a very mild scenario to finish out the week. In fact, these numbers are going to be pushing up easily into the potentially 50-degree range tomorrow in spots, especially just south of Baltimore. And you can see down toward Richmond into the 60s. That will be the story for us come Friday as we get a little bit of a warming push each day here into the start of the weekend. Now, for the weekend itself, slightly cooler as we fall back through the 50s. But compared to the Arctic blast of the last several days, this is very, very mild stuff. We'll check the 10-day forecast coming up in just a few minutes.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Several fiery sunrises of note this morning, from the shores of South Carolina to the savanna of Kenya's famed Abaseli National Park. Quite a buildup of icicles in Tennessee's Great Smoky Mountains, and strong winds and a westerly flow helped create these standing lenticular clouds over Mount Washington. Typically, it's just 1 or 2 layers, but the biggest one had 7.
Listen to Off the Radar, new episodes every Tuesday.
Polls are still open in New Hampshire. We'll take you to Nashua with how voters are feeling for the nation's first primary. Just a few more hours until the polls close in New Hampshire, the political world is focused on the first in the nation primary. Will there be any surprises, as it looks like Donald Trump and Joe Biden will face off again in November? Brian Crandall from our Sinclair sister station in Providence is in Nashua, New Hampshire tonight with the latest.
We're going to go and fight until the very last poll closes.
Nikki Haley makes her final pitch outside a polling place in Hampton, New Hampshire. She's the only Republican left in the way of Donald Trump once again being the party's nominee.
I didn't get here because of luck. I got here because I outworked and outsmarted all the rest of those fellas. So I'm running against Donald Trump. And I'm not going to talk about an obituary just because y'all think we have to talk about it.
People are upset in this country. They're really upset.
I talked to Trump's son Eric in Nashua, seeming already to be looking ahead to another general election showdown with Joe Biden.
People want to get back to the basics. They want to have the greatest economy in the world. They want to have the best education in the world. They want low prices. They want cheap fuel. They want businesses to be able to succeed. They want their family to be able to live the American dream. And that's what my father stands for.
What about all the legal cases against his father, including a federal indictment accusing him of trying to overturn the last election? Trump's side claims it's political persecution.
How do you convince maybe independents and maybe some Democrats who don't think that to see it your way?
The independents see that the legal cases are nonsense. We've polled this extensively, and people don't believe it.
No need to convince Kim Chabot.
Can tell who you're voting for.
Yes, the man.
Why do you support Donald Trump?
He supported me. 4 years ago, he was able to make my life better.
Some want the alternative.
I wanted to vote for Nikki Haley. I like what she stands for, and I also can't put a vote towards crazy.
Democrats, meanwhile, see lots of names on the ballot, most of them unfamiliar. Those who voted for President Joe Biden, like Mike Morse, had to write his name in.
The other guy is undesirable.
Polls close across the state by 8 o'clock. Nikki Haley has already signaled that she'll be staying in the race. She has an event scheduled tomorrow night in South Carolina. In Nashua, New Hampshire, I'm Brian Crandall.
All right, it's cold and snowy up there in New Hampshire, but we're going in the other direction here in Maryland. Temperatures climbing through the 40s, then the 50s, then the 60s into Friday. A little cooler as we head into the weekend, but still compared to the Arctic conditions of the last week, this is going to be mild. Scattered showers Saturday, Sunday for Ravens, and I think we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that for Sunday. Otherwise, you can see the long-term forecast here. Seasonable, mid-40s, that's kind of normal as you get into the tail end of January toward February 1st.
Wyatt, thank you. Well, finally tonight, with Valentine's Day just a few weeks away, is love crawling around out there? We need to know. The Bronx Zoo is bringing back its Name a Roach